So let's jump right on in. I'd like to kind of understand what everyone's background's about. So Colin, why don't you start off with telling us about about your career path. I noticed we had discussed how you founded PMC Sierra and are now an active investor. What does that all entail?
Yeah, so I try to put it in the context of the ecosystem, which first I thought was plants and woolly marmots and things, but then I read your thing and it's about the ecosystem of tech people. Okay, so when we started PMC, there was no ecosystem. There was one VC, that was Ventures West. And so it was pretty, and there also was no one really to tell you what to do. So we had a lot of technology and not much marketing, right? But eventually we got some money out of California, and boom, there we go, right? But it was a weird time. This is before most of you were born, I'm guessing, 1990
yeah, definitely
or so.
Me.
Yeah, definitely you. Yeah, not true. She's a little older than she looks, apparently. So.
I'll take that.
Yeah, that's a compliment. Yeah. So so I was with PMC.
I had to think about that.
You told me your age. I mean,
yeah,
what do you want me to do?
Right? When did you had mentioned the year you started off in technology here in Vancouver?
About 1990, yeah. I came back to Vancouver to start PMC Sierra, yeah. So
post-86, post-Expo, and kind of got started. What made you start with Sierra?
We had a simple idea. There was all these telecom guys in Canada, mostly out east, and there was Silicon Valley with all the chips here. So we just drew the two lines, and poof, that was it. It was really easy.
A connector of sorts.
Yeah, that was the idea.
And in regards to your career path, do you want to just walk us through it?
Well, I would say with PMC for about 20 years, was COO. When the internet happened, we were, I think the second most valuable company in Canada for a nanosecond, right? So kind of like the bubble that we'd just been through, except it was in year 2000, and then 2001. We couldn't get into a bathroom anywhere, if you know what I mean. We weren't people non grata. It was pretty bad. So from being on the top to the bottom, and so we started out again and went into storage as well and built the company back up. So it was a good time. Since then, I do, with the Creative Destruction Lab, about 25 companies come through a year, and you see them, and it's a very non-Canadian program. Every session, you basically kick 2 people out, right? So it's kind of like Survivor in a way. And there's 10 left at the end. And those 10 graduate, as they call it, right? So that's the way it works. And the way it works is that at every session, 1 or 2 advisors have to stand up and say they'll advise these guys for 4 hours for the next 2 weeks or a month. I think it's a month, actually, yeah. So that's how it works.
And so the 2 that exit in their Darwinian exit, why are they usually exiting, just out of curiosity?
The 10 of the 25 that make it to the end, I think it's, typically they have ideas that can scale, really. That it's, the people, a lot of guys have great little companies, but they're not going to grow to be huge, right? So it's easy to drop those ones, where someone's got an idea and got some traction maybe and got some people that are good, but it's really about, the end market, is it big enough? Yeah.
And so the market being big enough, and what are the other scaling issues usually?
People is a big one, yeah.
People.
And then technology, probably number 3, yeah.
Okay, wonderful. And what's your role with CDL?
I'm kind of like, I show up, right?
Sounds like me.
Kind of like here, you do all the work and I just show up, right? No, I mean, I'm a mentor there, or a fellow, they call it. So I have to put my hand up for 2 or 3 companies every time, and I help them out, right? But I don't do any organizing or anything like that.
So he just shows up like, kind of like Trump. Just kidding, I didn't call him Trump.
Maybe.
Do you want to be compared to Trump?
No, I just said that. I didn't mean to do that. Sorry, I didn't mean that either, guys. William, you seem to have taken a path that is a little bit more related to the community, as you mentioned, and building to get to Innovate BC. Community building to get to Innovate BC. Tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, sure. So I think it's great to have me and Colin up here because we're both totally different backgrounds. Colin is an actual business person. I'm just a PR hack. And so
And you're much younger too.
Yeah, much younger. We were talking earlier about, what was 89? Is that when you started? I think I said I wasn't in the country in diapers, maybe. But so I'm from Ottawa. I worked at Carleton University for many years, working in community building. The university had 12,000 commuter students, and there needed to be a way to bring those kids together because they didn't have dorm rooms to party in and get to know each other. So whenever I was at Carleton, I was working in communications and community building. So it was like, how can we build a community with these students? So that was partnerships, sponsorships, events, et cetera, some public affairs related stuff. And also before I did that job, I actually went to Carleton University and I studied political science, but I often wasn't in class. I was actually just networking with tech entrepreneurs and whatnot. So I had a lot of friends that worked at Shopify in Ottawa, and I was trying to network with entrepreneurs and business people, and all the most interesting things were happening in tech, and there were a lot of people working at Shopify. So that's how I sort of got into tech and just an interest in tech and writing and that type of stuff. And I only moved into Vancouver in 2015. So when I got here, there was an opportunity at BCIC, BC Innovation Council, now Innovate BC, and it was an opportunity to sort of merge the whole community building stuff with something I was passionate about, which was technology and innovation. So it made sense.
What kind of interested you in technology?
It was just, I think it was just the most interesting stuff happening back when I was in Ottawa. And again, I knew a lot of people who worked in the sector, so it was sort of a mini or micro culture of people that I got to be around. And again, it was a lot of like really early people in Shopify. So back when they had like 10 and 20,000 merchants, they have 800,000 now, right? So it was super early days, and I was just around the right people, and it was the most interesting stuff happening.
And did you ever think of crossing that chasm into like actually working for a tech company, or has that ever crossed your mind?
Yeah, it's definitely crossed my mind, but I have a good secure job.
So what made you join BCIC, now Innovate BC?
Well, sort of like I said, it was an opportunity to merge community building communications with something I was passionate about, which is tech and innovation. There's a really good Apple line, which is basically that technology achieves its true potential when it's infused with creativity and ingenuity from humans, right? And I think the reverse, right? Humans can really achieve their true potential with the right technology, right? It's a tool for empowerment, right? Solve problems globally, help businesses create value, ultimately make life better for people.
Yeah.
And that's the NDP talking point. So stop me whenever I start sounding a government spokesperson.
You switch parties, I get it. You went through, no one got that, okay.
There was an election.
An election, Liberals, NDP. Keep up with us, kids. So the ecosystem is kind of our next subject. I imagine both of you have interacted with both technology and startup companies. Tell us about your view of the Vancouver and the broader ecosystem. We can start with Vancouver. Colin, if you'd like to start.
Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff here. Obviously, the governments over the years have done a pretty good job compared to when we started out. They were gonna don't laugh. We're gonna have to pay all the engineers overtime. That was the government's edict, right? So, and we met with the premier, Mr. Harcourt, at the time, and he worked out a deal where if we give them options, we don't have to pay them overtime, right? So,
Who was the premier at the time?
Mike Harcourt, yeah. So, and he worked out a really good solution. It was really great, actually, right? So it was all worked out. So things. So the governments now that we have the venture capital credits, right? It's just an amazing system, right? Where you just find somebody who needs to lower their taxes this year, and then maybe they'll invest in your company, right? I think it's a good one. And the government's reasonably stable, right? You work for them, so I shouldn't say anything.
You can say whatever you like.
But we got good governance, so I think that stuff's all good in Vancouver. I think, and there's a lot of great people and great ideas, great education. One thing we don't have though is that we don't have any head offices, right? Other than maybe TELUS, I guess, right? Or maybe there's another one, I don't know, like Hootsuite. But so it's hard when you get to a certain size to grow a company here because there's not CFOs or HR people who've been there, done that. I think Toronto has the most head offices, then Calgary, then Montreal, and Vancouver's like down number 4, and it might even be after Halifax. I don't know, right? So that's a real negative here. And it also
William will correct you if you're wrong.
yeah, but also it's even more of a negative in the sense that I think people have worked in larger companies and seen them grow. Then they have the vision for what that could be, and that vision isn't here. So I see a lot of people just sell out when the first chance they get. Or I shouldn't say the first chance they get, but they sell their company fairly quickly. So that's maybe the negative of being here. And it rains, right? Does it ever fucking rain? I mean, I was traveling the world for like 20 years, and I never realized till I came back how, God, it
hasn't
rains.
been that bad, though, I feel like.
Well, I like living here.
Thank you, global warming.
I like living here. Yeah, exactly. We're at the next big, yeah. So I think that it's all really good. I mean, the weather's not that bad. And we got skiing, we got, great summers. So I think it's really, but we just don't have that few anchor tenants to help us out. Anyway, enough.
I love that perspective, though. Like,
yeah.
Yeah, you were about to say.
Well, the other thing is, what we have right now is I think there's at least 5, Series A kind of VCs in town, right? I mean, I work with Pender Fund, I work with Yaletown. Boris Wirtz, he doesn't invest here, and then there's a few others, right? So
Boris.
There's at least 5 or 6, which is a lot better than 1. And there's companies from the States who also have people here now. So it's really, I think that's really positive. Right?
Do you think we're in that final tipping point where we're about to start scaling up as a tech ecosystem?
Well, there's a lot of people who work in tech, but none of the companies are, are name brands, that's for sure, right? Yeah. So I don't know.
William, ContraPoint.
There's no counterpoint, and I'm going to try my hardest to not say talking points.
I love it.
So I need to think about this. No, I think Vancouver's an incredible place to start a technology company, and I think this is evidence of the interest and the desire for people to connect and network, right? Colin talked about some of the challenges, but again, he talked about the positives, right? Think about the talent that's here in the city. I'm sure everyone has read the Georgia Strait article that came out last week about the 10+ Silicon Valley companies that were moving to Vancouver because of the talent, because of the time zone, gateway to Asia, right? So there are many positive things happening in the city. Yeah. What is the question? It's just on talk about.
Whoa, he's criticizing. I read that article because of your tech journal, but I asked you to kind of give me your view on the Vancouver ecosystem.
Yeah. So again, to continue, I think if you're in Vancouver, it's pretty much and you want to network and get to know different people in the tech sector and connect and find a community that's focused on what you're interested in. It's impossible to not find that community. There's just too much stuff going on. There's just too many communities like Tech Vancouver and others and different accelerators and meetups. There's so much stuff for anyone who is interested in the tech sector, right? And then I could talk about, the post-secondary institutions, and I could talk about the talent. And people talk about capital a lot, but if you look at VC investment in Vancouver, Q1 this year is bigger than last year. We're close to Seattle. We're in the same time zone as California. We're, gateway to Asia. So there are a lot of positive things about being in Vancouver. You talked about some of the tax credits. So there's a lot of positive things about
people who don't like the heat could love the rain.
It hasn't rained that much the last year. I moved here from Ottawa, where winter is negative 40, right? And I just kept hearing about the rain, and then it hasn't rained that much actually the last couple of years.
There you go. Yeah. Saying you're for somewhere that's minus 40 and it's better. I don't know. There's got to be an analogy there. I don't know what it is.
People from the East Coast, they come here and they're like, but it's not minus 50 with windshield. I'm good. And I'm like, yeah, it's true. But no, I think there's a lot of positives here in Vancouver, and I think you kind of alluded to the most important. I think it's the talent. I think this is a holding pen for amazing talent, and it would be wonderful to see more companies move their HQ or satellite offices that aren't just focused in on engineering and that sort of software development, which is fantastic, but other parts of the business, because until we continue to build that skill set of sales, marketing, operations, HR, we're only limiting ourselves. And so hopefully that we see more and more of that.
Well said, but why did you invite us then if you were going to?
I'm just here for social commentary, really.
Does everyone know what article I'm talking about in the Georgia Strait? Yeah, I see a lot of nodding heads.
Do you want to name the 10 companies, or I think?
Well, there's a good number. So like Asana has an office here now. It was started by Dustin Moskovitz, task management software. What'd you say? Brex, they're speaking at an upcoming Tech
Next
Vancouver,
month.
right? Postmates, Zenefit, so Streak, Swerve, Parallel Domain. And these are all Valley companies that have opened offices in Vancouver. Actually, Tile just opened their engineering hub. Incredible. MailChimp bought company Lemon Stand in February, I think. So it's their first international office, right? So people are noticing. I think the momentum is in the right direction.
I agree. I think we're starting to see that momentum, and the tide's turning where we'll be as prosperous as Toronto, I think.
Where?
Toronto? How do you say it? Toronto? Toronto. So just kind of switching subjects about from the ecosystem, but what makes up the ecosystem is entrepreneurs. What kind of person do you think makes a successful entrepreneur?
Gee whiz, that was in the list. Okay.
I didn't send these questions to them.
You know, I think the first thing any entrepreneur needs is to be, like, if you want to be the head of the company, get strategy. It's all about that. Everything else can be learned, but if you don't play chess or poker, like, don't think about being a CEO, because you're not the right person, right? You're up against people who are trying to kill you, right? The other companies, right? And they've got guys who can play chess or poker or bridge or whatever. And I think you got to be strategic first is number one. And number two, I think the second thing is recognize what you're not good at, right? So if you're shitty at, ops or shitty at, R&D, then you got to hire the right guy. So that's my little take, and I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
What do you feel like your strengths and weaknesses were from that perspective?
I was pretty good operationally, had no trouble, very determined, pretty pig-headed sometimes, so you have to sort of lighten up a little bit, right? Everybody's good at sales, I think. Anybody who's in a startup who's gotten anywhere other than maybe that one chief scientist guy, right? They're all going to be good at sales, otherwise they wouldn't be there. So
I agree. Like, if you're going to scale that company, your leadership needs to have an understanding for biz dev and sales. Yeah. William, similar question. I know you haven't, you've done a little bit in terms of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, well, I'll talk from the perspective of someone who oversees programs and services to support entrepreneurs. I think the biggest thing is an ability to listen and learn. I think that's what we found. A lot of entrepreneurs, and I'm sure you know this, they have an idea of what their product should be, and then actually their customers will tell them what they actually want, right? And I think the ability to shift and listen to what that is will help them be more successful. Within my marketing team, whenever it comes to developing strategy or campaigns, one of our lines that we often use is "there are no facts in the building," which is a famous Steve Blank line, which I'm sure a lot of people know, which is you need to get out of this building and go talk to people and find out what they want, right?
In regards to listening, just from a government perspective, what are you finding that a lot of people that work in the tech sector are asking the government for and you're not seeing? Tough question.
We're not seeing.
Yeah, something that we don't have that people who are working at tech companies are finding these tech companies that are in desperate need of that needs to be addressed by the government.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, so what do tech companies need? They need talent and expertise. They need capital, and they need investment, and they need access to markets and customers. And again, I don't want to be government spokesperson whatsoever.
I'm just curious to know what you're thinking that.
But companies need people. Mm-hmm. They need talent, and there's not enough of it. That's no secret. And they need expertise. So seasoned entrepreneurs or executives in various functions, HR, sales, et cetera, to come take mid-sized companies and to scale them. Mm-hmm. And we don't have enough of that.
Yeah. Okay.
Here's what your thoughts are on.
Yeah, no, I think I already sort of mentioned that. I think it's not just the talent too. One thing I didn't mention is, so we don't have a lot of boards that sit here. So you come in to get your smaller company board, and it's not someone who's seen something scale. Then they might not have the vision that we want to go all the way with this, and then they need the access to capital too. So I think again, it's about the same thing we've been talking about. Not a lot of anchor tenants, is that what they call it here? And big company anchor tenants who can bring people who maybe want to push companies harder and bigger.
Is Cameron still here from PwC, or does he have to run out? Oh, okay. Well, he has a good article on Business in Vancouver about scaling that you should all go find.
And then when both of you kind of put together a few different businesses, PMC Sierra being one, and I think it's a viable news source, Vancouver Tech Journal.
Well, thank you.
It's awesome. What made you take the leap and kind of set these up?
Sheer stupidity, I guess. Yeah. Just absolute sheer stupidity. Being young and stupid and just wanted to enjoy myself. Yeah, I don't think there was any real. I think most entrepreneurs are like that. You just see something you want to do, and you forget all the downsides, right? Because obviously having a salary is better than not having a salary, and in startups it's always a little. I've never had a safe job in my life, just to be fair. I've always worked for companies that were on the edge, right? So it's I think it's just something you really want to do. What was your question again? I forgot.
This seems to be a repeating pattern. Just what made you take the leap with starting PMC Sierra?
Yeah, it just seemed like the right thing. Everything like the background fit and what we wanted to do was the right thing. But we had no idea what was going to happen, if you know what I mean, right? So I think most companies I see, they have a good idea and they just want to pursue that. And whether it's a business or not, whether it's a company or not, you're not sure when you start, right? Then you work it out later. I think most companies are like that.
So sheer stupidity. And then how about yourself, William? What made you kind of start up the Vancouver Tech Journal?
Well, it could be the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Which is why I'm still young, and then I could be seen as stupid, right? Why would anyone want to read what I have to write about technology every week? You know what I mean? I just wanted to write something that I would read, right? Yeah. Which is, how do I get my hands on the most important technology news in Vancouver every week? And I was like, well, why not? And there was very low risk to it. It was just my time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wonderful. Colin, a lot has been said about the willingness to sacrifice when one speaks about entrepreneurship. Do you feel this is true? And if so, could you share a story about your greatest sacrifice?
Right. So, gotcha. So I think when you read about all these startup companies and everything, and I'm trying to think of movies like Facebook and Doug Copeland's book, what was it, Microsurfs and all that. No one has any children, right? You ever notice that, right? They don't have children. In real life, we have children, right? So I think that was probably the number one hardest thing. When we started PMC, I had 3 kids, and we had, I think my wife's here, we put $3,000 down on a house in Vancouver at the time for a $120,000 house, believe it or not. But it was a dump, but whatever. But we had no way of making the mortgage payments, whatever they were. We sucked somebody into thinking we could make them. So you're sitting there, you're going, that's pretty tough, right? So then when things go south, which they always do, right? I think we ran out of money 2 or 3 times. You're sitting there working hard and you don't see your family. That's all. That was probably the biggest sacrifice, right? Now they think it was a good thing not having me around, I'm sure, but it was tough. The other one was, I think there was 2, so I don't want to leave it with just that. Is when we started, we were like maybe 30 years old or something like that. I'm trying to remember, and we really didn't have the chops to scale the company. So we had to bring in a CEO. It was Bob Bailey from the US, right? So that was pretty hard, hiring your new boss. So that was a little bit tough. But the guy who was helping us, he made it easier. He brought in a really shitty candidate and said, this is the one I want, and then brought in Bob. So Bob looked really good, right? So, okay, we'll take him. That's okay. And then, and Bob and I, we've been friends now for 30 years, so it all worked out. But it was a bitter pill, right? You think you're going to be running it, and
Have you watched Silicon Cowboys?
Silicon Cowboys?
Yeah. It's about the rise and kind of the rise of the people, the gentleman who founded Compaq Computers,
Yep.
and very similar. Like the point of when things started to fall apart, not that they completely fell apart, but like for the leadership team was when they recognized that sacrifice of family life. And I hear that more often than people care to admit. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, and then the latest one is the show Silicon Valley, right?
Yeah.
There's no children in that show at all.
None.
I mean, it's zero, and that's just probably not realistic, right? So.
Yeah, no, this one was like there were 30-year-olds from Dallas, right? Like moved in and set up shop. So it's fantastic. Do you have anything to add to that?
I have more questions, but you're the moderator.
No,
so
go ahead. No.
I was going to say, like, can you get deeper into one of those anecdotes from that time?
About
I just made some of the sacrifices, running out of money.
well, one time, yeah, I can tell one anecdote, but so my brother invited us to sleep at Wenatchee Lake or something on Vancouver Island.
Mm-hmm.
We were to go for the week. In the middle of the week, one of our investors phoned up, said, "You got to be in Denver at this restaurant tomorrow night." So I had to, we hadn't have any money, so he paid the money, and I flew to Denver. And it was because there was some restaurant where there was this fucking thing where they had opera singers come and serve. So I had to sit there, and these, yeah, sure enough, you go there, and he says to the waitress, "Will you sing?" And she sings a little aria, and I'm sitting there going, yeah, okay, what the hell did I fly all this way? And it's a crappy little restaurant. But he gave us $1 million, and I flew back home. so, I mean, I would have sung the aria for $1 million, right?
Good question. On, I guess, the flip side, we've kind of talked about this things that make Vancouver so great, and you spoke a little bit about the challenges. But what do you find are the greatest challenges facing Vancouver and its burgeoning ecosystem? We can start with Colin, because he was very positive in PC. Oh, sorry, with William. I was looking at Colin and pointing at you.
I don't want to repeat myself, but I have to repeat myself. We need more people.
Yeah.
Yep. That's all.
That's it. Mic drop. Yeah, I'm leaving, so there you go, right? Just
Thanks.
kidding. Is it going to be a repetition of talent is the biggest challenge that we're facing?
Yeah, I think so. But just one sort of thing about it is, we have a global city with many immigrants, but sometimes we don't think globally, right? And that really shocks me sometimes, how many people are focused on local markets versus global markets. And I think that's, should be, it's a wake-up call to everybody, right? Just always think global, right?
And are you speaking from a talent perspective or from a sales and biz dev?
More sales and biz dev,
Yeah.
Of course, yeah. We get great sales biz dev guys, but they just, either they're not, well, they're not super strategic. They're not Machiavelli, which you got to be, right, in business. You got to outsmart the other guy. It's war, right? And there's a lot of guys who've done that. And then at the same time, a lot of them just are maybe afraid to go to Asia or Europe, wherever or the Middle East, wherever their market really is, right?
So on that note, this will be my only government
That's
plug.
okay, I love it.
The BC government actually does have a pretty sophisticated trade and investment network in most major markets around the world. So if you are trying to find export markets and you're looking for people, on the ground in India or in England, right? The BC Ministry of Jobs, Trade and Technology, which Innovate BC reports into, does have people. And if you want to talk later, I can talk to you more about that type of stuff. But the government is a resource on that front.
Wonderful. What do you think, just to add to that, Colin, creates that kind of gap between us going to the global markets? Like, why are we not approaching global markets?
Great question. Not sure I have a really, really good answer on that. Yeah. I don't know. It's funny. People come here. I think some people like it here, right? Like you said.
Do you find Vancouver's a lifestyle city, not a...
Yeah, I think that's where you're getting. Yeah, that's probably realistically that's the issue. Even though we can fly to Asia 24 times a day, right? People just don't get on the plane sometimes, right?
And just kind of like adding to it, like speaking about the lifestyle city of it being kind of a 9 to 4 operator, not saying that it is, but oftentimes it is. And, sometimes risk averse. do you, other than like setting up shop and having talent locally, like what will it take for us to shift that mindset?
Probably a few success stories, I think, would be the
Yeah.
easiest way to say it. That's pretty much it.
Okie dokie. Do you want to add anything to that?
No, I was going to say the exact same thing,
Okay.
but that takes time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Slack, like, you know, having not a head office here, but one of their bigger offices here, and that IPO, and Brex setting up shop, and, you know, them being on that path for IPO success, I think is definitely starting that wave, and we're starting to see those success stories come out of Vancouver more and more. Galvanize is preparing for IPO too, so some good companies. In regards to putting on that government hat, if you were elected mayor, what is the first thing you'd address to resolve some of the complaints within the local tech system?
So this isn't a comment on government policy or anything, but
I love the caveats.
I would do, so really what I should, well, I can't speak to that, but what I can tell you, that's a pivot in PR speak. I would be focusing on affordability, actually.
And how would you do that?
I'm not a mayor, so I don't have to think about that. But I know that's what I would focus on as a citizen and a voter.
Yeah. And how about yourself, Colin?
Yeah, I actually think the governments do a pretty good job. We got the shreds, we got the VCCs, we got a pretty good government. So it comes down to affordability. So maybe we get the Intra-West Housing Authority to come down here and make some houses for tech guys. I don't know. I think affordability is probably the one thing that could they could
Do you
do better
think like everyone talks about affordability in terms of the end of like housing and stuff like that, but how about salaries? Like they've been stagnant for so long. Is it time for government to start encouraging local tech companies to raise the standards?
I'm not sure that's government's role, right?
And absolutely not. But it's something that we're not seeing. Like, how do we get that salary kind of increase to be competitive on the global markets, and also competitive, like, creating the ability for Vancouver to be an affordable city?
Which hat do you want me to wear? I invested in about 10 startups, so you should work for free. I mean, they're going to be successful. We'll give you all the options you want. You'll be rich someday. How's that sound? I'm semi-serious, right? So some of the startups wouldn't survive here without the lower salaries, right? Mm-hmm. But you're right. I think it right now, so people go to Amazon and they go to Intel, they go to Microsoft, right? And they get paid quite well there, realistically, right? So it's a bit of a problem, yeah. I think more funding will help, more success will help. Yeah.
Great. I guess we can wrap things up and open up to questions, but if you were to give some parting words on the tech ecosystem, what would that be?
I think, it's great everybody's out here, and just get out there and do it, right? I mean, it's so easy not to do something. It's again, I'd say think global, don't think local, but just I don't want to say follow your dream, because it's probably going to be a nightmare. Let's face it, right? It's tough, right? But start, get involved, and it doesn't have to be your own thing. Just get involved with someone who's got a good vision and help it grow. That's all. It's really all you can do, right?
And how about words of wisdom from you?
Yeah, I would say something that I think people don't think a lot about in Vancouver and BC is that the economy here is quite diversified. We're not reliant on any one industry, and I think what that means for a lot of entrepreneurs or technologists is that there are a lot of problems to be solved in other industries. And so there shouldn't be any startups building companies where there isn't a real industry-driven need.
Here in Vancouver?
Yeah, there are far too many other industries that are transitioning to the digital economy or going through a digital transformation that the startups here shouldn't be working on things that people don't want. There are real problems to be solved, and I'd encourage anyone who's working on a company to focus on that.
I think that's fantastic advice. If there's any questions, I'm going to kind of walk my way through the audience. We'll take about 3 to 5. I'll start on this side. George?
Colin, I'm old enough to remember the days of PMC Sierra back in the day. And in fact, I remember in the tech industry here in the government, when we were software and we had to get a WorkSafe PC designation, they said, you're a manufacturer. And they basically classified us like a steel mill. So, because the tech industry was so unknown here that you were classified as a manufacturer, you could break a nail on a disk or something. So, but I'm curious about in the ecosystem of Silicon Valley and so on, and I lived in Israel where the tech industry is very, we don't see the exits creating millionaires that then go on found companies, which is, PayPal and so on. Why is that? We don't see that breadth of people that have exited and then go on to start new ventures. If we didn't have the accelerator incubator system here, I'm not sure what would happen. So I'm curious about your comment on that.
No, that's a very good point. Partly because we haven't had maybe quite enough exits, right? Could be part of it, right? I guess we're going to have Slack. I'll call it a follow-on, right? That's a pretty big time, right? So maybe there's a good example, right? But it's tough to do it twice. I think in the U.S. there's probably 10,000 guys exit a year, and there's maybe 10 of them actually have a good follow-on. I mean, it's like getting struck by lightning twice, just to be honest with you, right? So I think it's probably more the numbers just got to add up, right? And Lord knows people are trying, right? I've been with Redland for 20 years, right? And we're going to be a huge success, right? And same with my counterparts, right? They work very hard to try to get that thing, but it's tough. Good question, though.
The one I can always think about is Marcus with POF, right? Like that was a $585 million exit. So he's starting to reinvest in Vancouver and in British Columbia in general. And we're starting to see that happen more and more. So it's great to see. Any other questions on this side? Aphrodite, I remembered. Over here.
When that article came out, kind of about the 10 big companies that are coming to Vancouver, like with more tech giants coming to Vancouver, like what does that mean for the startup scene? Do you think it'll negatively affect it, or kind of what does that mean for, yeah, I already said that, thank you.
Yeah, that was a great question. I think it puts a spotlight on Vancouver. Again, we don't just want companies to come here. Again, we're trying to attract talent, and we're trying to attract investment, and we're trying to attract companies. And I think the more companies here, ultimately in the long run, that will be a net positive, right? And again, that's my short answer.
Yeah, the pros and the cons. Obviously, if I have working age children, I'm pretty happy they're coming here, right? And they certainly are pushing the salaries up, which, as noted, we're lower. On the other hand, we started PMC because we really couldn't get a job here, so I'll do the counterpoint.
So I have a question. It's about the technology ecosystem here, and maybe it's a bit of an abstract question, how we define a technology company, because you have companies that are building technology, you also have companies that are using technology to get the edge on their competitors. So I was wondering if you could speak to that, how the entire business sector is evolving, whether you talk about the energy sector, tourism, different companies in sectors not traditionally thought of as highly technical, how they're evolving.
So we didn't really talk about Innovate BC where I work, but Innovate BC is a crown agency of the province. We work with innovators to connect them to funding, resources, support, anything they need to grow and create the industries and jobs for the future. And so Innovate BC actually doesn't think like, oh, we just work with tech companies, right? We work with innovators. So for us, that might be a company that produces software, hardware, but often that could be a company in mining who's looking to mitigate their environmental impact and wants to be connected to a so-called tech company that can help them solve that problem. So I know we've been saying like tech a lot this evening, but in my day-to-day work, we don't say tech a lot. We talk about innovators. And for us, it's always, could be any company, could be any size, they could be actually in any industry, and they could be anywhere in the province. So I don't know if there are any companies that aren't tech companies or that aren't leveraging technology to do what they need to do to run their business. So we don't focus on tech as an organization.
It's the digital disruption is happening all around us, right? So any company, I think, has got to be petrified right now, with AI coming in, like mining, oil and gas, all those, just the energy sector in general. They got to be really worried, right? I mean, you could be disrupted tomorrow by something you just don't know. So I think having a good, group of people in BC who can help us with the industries we have and help them transform, because they're all going to be different in 10 years. I don't think, energy is the one that just mind-boggling. It's so big. It's just massive, right? And it's going to be totally disrupted. We got, renewables are coming down in price. Batteries are getting cheaper. What are all these guys going to do? They can't just keep doing the same thing they're doing. So it's up to some of the smart people to help them out. That's my feeling.
Great. Any other questions over here and behind you? Over here. Oh, I missed you, but you can contact them later. I think I have Dave left, and we're going to end with that. Sorry.
So I'm always trying to figure out, what's the big difference, or what are the main differences between Silicon Valley and Vancouver? You guys have talked about the exits, the volume of talent down there, perhaps senior management talent who've been there, done that, and can bring that to another startup or a bunch of startups. Outside that and all the money down there, what is it that makes Silicon Valley different, and can we do it here?
I'll be short, and then I think you can probably give a more nuanced answer. But first of all, I don't know if we want to be Silicon Valley. And then the second thing is, I'm just going to say scale, right? So there are same amount of people in California as Canada, right? So the scale down there is just significantly bigger. But I don't know if we want to be Silicon Valley, to be honest.
Why wouldn't we want?
Have you been to San Francisco?
I used to live there.
Well, then I think you know why.
Yeah, I think you sort of answered your own question in the question, though, right? But I think the other one maybe missed it. It's also a mecca for talent, so that's something we can work on. Is we can do a lot. The Stanford just attracts the best, and they come out and do stuff, right? Hopefully, we can do that here. But I think you answered your question with when you started.
Also thinking about the investment culture, and there certainly seems to be an attitude happy with risk or friendly to risk that doesn't seem to exist here, maybe?
Oh, I would say, and I don't know what your thoughts are, Colin, but there's just far more capital, right?
Yeah, but the capital comes up here too. So I think that's a bit. I think someone says, "Oh, I just can't get money for my company." That's something you can overcome, right? I think it's hard. You're right. It's harder. I'm not trying to say that, but I think it can be overcome for the good opportunities.
We have one last question, and then we're going to wrap it up. Just over here.
Going to San Francisco.
Well, I think it's just opportunities, honestly. It's just gotten to a point where my career's plateaued, and I need to learn more. And it's unfortunate. This is where I grew up. So it wasn't an easy decision, but I need to move my career along and learn some new things. Yeah, we'll see. The tax bracket comes down.
This is for Colin. I work for a company called Sierra Wireless, which is actually headquartered in Vancouver area. I can say it's in Richmond. And from what I know, it grew in PMC Sierra's basement. So can you speak a little bit more to that, on how that venture worked out? Because it's a pretty significant venture in Vancouver.
You know, Sierra Wireless is an awesome company. Yeah, we actually used to own Sierra Wireless, and we sold it in 1998 or 1999 because we thought optical was going to rule the universe, right? No one had cell phones then, right? So everybody does something really stupid in their life, right? And selling Sierra Wireless was probably one of the dumber fucking things we ever did. 'Cause at the time, the internet was optical, right? So, but it was Andrew Harries, right? I remember they just camped out in our lab, yeah, the 5 or 6 guys, right? And then we gave them the money, and then when it got to a certain stage, some other investors came in and they moved out. But we were still the majority shareholder until 1988, 99, and the company's still doing great as far as I know, right? Good luck with, you guys are doing the IoT thing now, right? Good luck with it, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. A round of applause for both William and Colin. Thank you, gentlemen.